Okay, so magic items. So welcome to Renegade live streaming. Now, I decided that I'm going to get stuck into magic items and modify the cards and things like that. So you've seen in the previous episodes, you've seen the item card for, say, fire elementals and things like that. So I just wanted to show that I've decided to, instead of having a generic magic item, say for example fire elemental magic item, I've decided I'm going to include actual items. So the first line here, as you can see, I'll zoom in on it. First item here, it's got fire elemental in that cell range there, so that's that is a merged and centered just there. And then over here, what we've got is a random generator. So I'll show you, for example, some strange combinations. The idea being that in a high fantasy, I'm making it so that, you know, elemental creatures are bound to just about anything, and that some of these items might seem strange, but once you've got priests basically creating items for on whims, almost to whimsical sort of situation. In 1,000 years since the War of the Gods, there have been unbalanced magic items. I'll talk about balanced and unbalanced magic items later on, but in the 1,000 years since, they've pretty much just been doing nothing but, you know, single elemental binding. So they haven't been able to combine into opposed elements, or all four elements bound to the same item. So that sort of power, that sort of that's a fairly powerful magic item to be balanced. If it's got all four elements in it, that's the most powerful kind, because the four elements balance each other out. If you have two opposed elements, then that's stable as well. But as I said, since the War of the Gods, the only binding that's been going on is single element, and that's not quite as reliable. So we'll get to that later. Anyway, so I'm just wanting to just hit the F9 button and show that I've got such a huge variety of items that, you know, could come up as a combination of element and bound to a particular item. Now we've still got the abilities down the bottom here, so they continue to adjust. So those powers are available to the person who has a fire elemental apron. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when it comes to the magic items being a little bit whimsical. It may seem strange to have them like this, but anyway, we'll go with it. Initially I was going to make it so that people could choose the magic item, but now that I've decided that I'm going to make it so that sorry about the noise. Okay, so we'll stop that. So what was I going to say? Initially my intention was to make it so that people could choose the type of item that it was, but I've decided that I'm going to make it so that it's, you know, random. Now I'm going to also make it so that the the value of these items is dependent on what they sell for at auction. So I'm not sure if we've discussed the auctions in the past, but the way that the auctions will work is that my intent is that anytime there's a magic item that's found in the field, that those items will then go to auction, and that any geopolitical player can then bid on those items. Now, my intention is to make it so that every province has an equal amount of loot to be found. So the only way I can really make sure that they've got equal loot is to calculate what the items that they sell at auction, to make sure that they that I calculate how much or sum up how much they're worth when they go at auction, and that will enable me to basically work out how much they've got remaining and ensure that it's equal to everybody. So, not sure if any of that made any sense, but it will work itself out in the gameplay, or in the play testing, I should say. So, play testing will commence, and then I'll be able to work it out from there. So, Fire Elemental Imp. Okay, so yeah, what I'm just doing right now is I'm simply copying and then pasting into the cells. Now, 18 point seems to be a problem, so I'm going to reduce down to 16 across the board. Just in terms of the layout, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to go for 18 point. So it may be that it's not going to be as easy to see, but main thing is that I'm just taking it down to 16 to prevent there from being like runovers when it comes to the layout. If I don't do this properly, it might end up running over the cell and clipping off the side of the cell and things like that. So that's the reason why I'm doing that. Now it's a little bit repetitive, so I'm just going to keep going though, and show off the layouts and things like that a little bit more. What else is there? No, that's about it. I mean, really, I just wanted to show off the idea of having this diversity of magic item. Now, I mean, look, I've been talking about it, and I'll just type it in now, which is so things like a teaspoon of stirring. So I've talked about some of the whimsical magic items that some old biddy has asked the priest to create a teaspoon of stirring. She's got maybe some pain, and maybe she's got an injury that continues to cause an injury, and so she's basically asked for something that she can basically make a cup of tea and then use the teaspoon of stirring, and then when she stirs the tea, it will create a magic, like a healing potion, for example. So that's how whimsical it could get. Looking down the bottom there, where are we? Healing. Now, at the moment, it doesn't have healing there. But for example, I mean, it's just a teaspoon of stirring. It may be that it's just an elemental spirit with just one just one power, and that is healing. And so part of the binding is that when the teaspoon that has the elemental bound within, when it is put into a cup of tea and stirred, it then turns the cup of tea into a healing potion. So that's the binding that may be on it. Now, part of the whimsical nature of elementals is that it may be that the little old biddy who's stirring the cup of tea with the teaspoon of stirring has to giggle like a little girl while stirring the tea. So that's just a minor inconvenience. That's just the spirit is kind of effectively causing them to giggle as part of the bleed from the elemental through the item through to the user of the item. So I'll get into unbalanced magic items and the effects later on, but I just wanted to put in the teaspoon of stirring, as I've been talking about the teaspoon of stirring for quite a long time. Anyway, I'm going to copy that one and then go down and paste over the top of the teaspoon of stirring. Anyway, so hopefully I'll have some magic items to share later on. I'm going to also put in some very special... Well, I'm going to start naming them to a certain extent. It may be that they acquire names, like named magic items. To me, it's another dimension, another quality of a fantasy game world, is the actual items, if they're renowned, that they can have a history and a name. But I'll get into that later. Anyway, all right, thanks for being here. If you've got any questions, just send me a message, and if you want more